The structures that we're making at the moment are using a number like 8 or 10 lengths, and they're laid out in a grid, which is a really simple over-under pattern. It's a little bit mathematical to begin with, but once the grid is laid out and it's sitting on the ground, then we're hoisting that up. So we're weaving upside down. Normally when I work, I'm plugging willow or plugging materials into a base, and then I'm lifting them up. But because of the weight of these materials, it would be really difficult to lift them up and to keep them sitting in a symmetrical way. So we're using gravity to help us to build these. This is a whole new project for me because it's working with coppice materials, working with sweet chestnut. I started researching what was available to me locally because I was getting willow from Somerset, and I realised there's a huge variety of coppice wood around the Sussex area. So I started looking at what has been grown in Sussex, what's available to me, what is currently coppiced. The chestnut comes as planks, and then all the knots are removed, and shorter lengths of the chestnut are then finger jointed together. So what I've got is 6 metre lengths and 10 metre lengths, which are fairly uniform, but still there's places where there's going to be a little bit of, there's still some danger. There's a little bit of a risk with them. And I'm using a technique to try and weave those together where I'm not really joining any, I'm just using one big piece and seeing how they work together. So these ones are being hoisted up, and then we're doing a systematic measuring and clamping to get the crossover points as uniform as possible. And despite lots and lots of measuring, we found that we never get it quite right. There's always a little bit of asymmetry in there. It seems like the material would be really uniform, but it's not. It twists and curves at different rates, so we're finding some pieces have a huge twist, and we're trying to counteract and work with that. It's been really exciting working with this material. Before I got my hands on it for this project, I'd never ever worked with it before, so what I'd planned was very much theory. I was very relieved when I got the material and found that it could do what I needed it to do. One of the differences with the work now is that I need help. I can't lift or move things really by myself, so I've had some fantastic help from volunteers at Fabrica, and that's been really interesting, having other people's viewpoints. It seems like most of the people have worked with sculpture and with larger scale work before, so it's been really helpful having that support. The main inspiration for this has been around working with clusters. So over the last few years I've started to become very attuned to looking at the downs where I live, seeing how clusters of hawthorn grow together. Not only do the seeds collect together and they start to grow together, but they kind of morph into each other. And I start to see this everywhere: copses of trees, people together, animals, and just the way people will sit in a group together and all start to maybe mirror each other or lean in the same direction. So this feeling of a cluster, and that a similar force or elements will act upon them, has been the main feeling about what I wanted to make. Plus the flowing lines of the landscape around here, and a connection or an interconnectedness between everything. None of these vessels or forms that I make should really stand alone, I feel. There should be some play between them. There should be some movement towards each other or away from each other, and some lines that connect them.
The context to Cluster and the development of the exhibition with Annemarie was looking at the 10th anniversary of the Wilton Downland Museum, which is a Downland grid shell woven structure using local sustainable materials. The Woodland Enterprise Centre also has a grid shell building, and 2012 coincides with the 10th anniversary of these two structures. Annemarie is a basket maker, has been working for over 10 years, mainly in outdoor structures. So for her, this was a step up and challenge to work in much larger scale with an indoor site-specific context. And her research involved visiting the Woodland Enterprise Centre and talking through how the lattice grid shell was actually built and developed.
So we've moved the work into Fabrica now, and building the work in here is very different. The objects themselves that we've made look really different in here. The light is so different, and it's interesting even moving them around the gallery, because in one area on the wood they can look quite yellow, and then we take them up onto the stone and they can look kind of quite grey. It's lovely having them in here and drawing the lines from them, extending them and letting them grow into the church and into the architecture here. So we've worked on configurations that we had devised before, and we're tweaking them and reassessing how they work. We've also made a larger piece which is considerably scaled up from the previous ones, and that's presenting quite a lot of challenges. So we're all going to lift it from all the way around, but then we want... Can we all spread around it now? You know, every time we've worked with a different scale of material, there's been new and different issues, and this at the moment is 4.5 metres tall. It's felt quite precarious at times during the build. And what we're doing at the moment is we're working towards reinforcing it to turn it over onto its side, so it can have the same feel as all the other pieces. The experience of working with the Fabrica volunteers has been absolutely fantastic. I think when you're working with something and you're seeing it every day, it's been really brilliant to have fresh eyes come in, and you know, and people with opinions who have been willing to say, actually, I don't think that works, or that's wonderful. So it's been very exciting to go with some of the ideas or the input and the opinions of other people.
Hold the ladder a bit, just thank you.
Volunteers are very integral to everything that Fabrica does, so everything from being out in the front of the gallery, welcoming visitors and talking about the work, through to behind the scenes in the office. We really wanted to work with volunteers to get a real behind the scenes sense of how a commission is developed for Fabrica, what that involves, how an artist develops what's an initial outline and brief to then work for Fabrica in a more site-specific context.
My experience of working with Annemarie and helping to build the exhibition cluster has been really, really valuable. She's a really interesting artist to work with. She's very generous and she knows what she wants, but she's very open to hearing ideas from participants and volunteers. So it feels like it's a real collaboration. It feels like we're working together. And what's great, she knows the materials. She knows them so well that when you're a little bit unsure, it just goes over to Annemarie, and she kind of gives you the confidence to carry on. It really expands the experience of being able to share with the public when they come in to see the work, the actual hands-on experience of working with the materials, but also with the artist and the thinking behind the artist.
I'd really like if, when people came in, if they questioned where this material came from, what it is. I'd like them to be excited, I suppose, by the lines and the ability to move around the objects and to move through the space. And I suppose I would like them to understand, or to get a little bit of an inkling of that scaling up from a basketry form, and then maybe when they look at a basket, or they look at something woven, or that they look at something handmade, that they'll start to question some part of the process or some part of where it's come from.